But first up, Donald Trump has now weighed in on an issue that drives libertarians crazy: civil asset forfeiture. And he did it in a way that seemingly makes the controversial practice part of his administration's policy. Listen to this from a meeting the president had with a group of sheriffs.
We got a state senator in Texas that was talking about introducing legislation to require conviction before we can receive that forfeiture money.
Can you believe that?
And I told him that the cartel would build a monument to him in Mexico if he could get that legislation.
Who's the state senator? Do you want to give his name? We'll destroy his career.
Will destroy his career. So, President Trump may have been joking about ruining the career of a Texas state lawmaker, but it is clear that he agreed with the sheriff that it should be okay for the government to seize the cash and property of somebody who's only suspected of a crime, not someone who's been convicted. Now, there may be no better example of big government gone crazy. Let's see what Dr. Ron Paul has to think of all this. He's the host of the Ron Paul Liberty Report, as well as a former congressman and presidential candidate. So, Dr. Paul, this is coming from some sheriffs in your neck of the woods. The Rockwall County Sheriff Harold Evenson basically calling out this Texas state lawmaker who wanted to put an end to civil asset forfeiture. What do you think about all this?
Well, I think he's endorsing theft. That's what they're doing. They're stealing stuff. They have no right to come because somebody is a suspect and they happen to stop some automobile because they have some cash in the car. They can take their money, and then that person has to try to recoup it and get it, or if there's drugs in the car or for whatever. I mean, it is the worst thing that can be done is civil asset forfeiture. It's all this bizarre, out-of-control war on drugs, and unfortunately, we haven't had much hint that the new administration is going to help us out there to come around to a sensible approach to the war on drugs, like getting rid of most of it. And yet we were hopeful that Obama would be better, but he wasn't a lot better until at the end when he did do some pardons on it. But unfortunately, it's ingrained. I can't understand why the politicians feel so obsessed that that's the only way they can stay popular is being tough on the war on drugs.
Yeah, and it came up a little bit during Jeff Sessions' confirmation hearings, but unfortunately the future Attorney General is not very good at all, not only on the war on drugs, specifically on civil asset forfeiture. I don't think they grilled him enough on that, but actually 84% of Americans oppose the taking of money and property before conviction, because you are not guilty of any crime, but you essentially have to pay to get all of your stuff back and your money back, and there is absolutely no due process there.
Yeah, and I think that people aren't aware of this. I'm delighted that you're talking about it, because a lot of people just don't realize what's going on. But it's a basic right that you are punished and you have to pay the fine and they take your stuff, and you might be totally innocent. I mean, that is just so bizarre and so un-American. It's such a shame that the president jumped on the bandwagon there and became rather sharp there, but that's the way it is. But I think it comes from this basic assumption, which is deeply in opposition to the libertarian principle, that we ought to tell people what they should put into their minds and their bodies and what they eat and they drink, because we need somebody to take care of us, and that's where it is from. A lot of people get tempted to say, well, drugs are different, they're dangerous. Yeah, but you know, overeating is dangerous too, but we don't want the government telling us how much sugar we're supposed to have each day, and yet there's been authoritarians that try to do that as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, it seems as though we're clearly headed down that path, especially if we go toward single-payer insurance option. But, you know, I don't want to get distracted from this, because I do think it's incredibly important, and I hope there are some liberty-minded people within the administration who have the president's ear at some point and explain to him how wrong this really is, and how it truly violates the Constitution on so many levels. And the federal government in 2014, which is the last year for which we have statistics, seized $5 billion in cash and property from people suspected of crimes. And when I say suspected, you know, there was a Burmese Christian band that had all of their stuff taken because the arresting officer didn't like the answer that the driver gave when he was questioning him when the band was pulled over.
you know, if you're rewarded for something, and that is taking somebody's property, and these police departments are rewarded, they get to keep the equipment and they keep the money. Here they either sell the equipment and get the money. It's off the books. And I cannot guarantee you, out of those billions of dollars of stuff they take, that there's probably a fair amount of corruption there. There's no real audits of this stuff either. Yeah. So the principle is wrong dealing with the person they took it from, but then as it's extended, and they thought, well, we need to finance, we don't have enough equipment. They go out and buy tanks and all these other things to further advance their SWAT team approach when they decide, well, they might be smoking marijuana. We better go in there armed because these people are dangerous. Oh, so man. It is terrible that we have given up so easily on the basic principles of liberty and allowing people to make personal choices for themselves.
Well, as long as you're on the front lines, that'll never happen. Thank you so much, Dr. Paul.